Hello everyone, my name is Christian Klein. I'm the Technical Product Owner and Data Protection Officer at Elastisys. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Elastisys, we are sponsoring the pizza tonight in exchange for you listening 2 more minutes as I speak about ourselves. We are a company in Sweden who is working at this intersection of Kubernetes, cloud native, and security. We are around 50 people, split among 2 offices, one in Lund, just a few train stations in that direction, and another one up in Umeå. And we are specialized in offering all kinds of services around cloud native and Kubernetes, such as managed services, self-managed services, consultancy, and training. Our flagship product is Velkin, which is an application platform designed for applications critical to society. I don't want to bore you too much with details, but let's just say we took 20 plus of the most important and best open source and cloud native projects and carefully integrated them so that even your CISO is happy. Do talk to me during the pizza break more if you want to learn more about Velkin. But today it's not going to be me who is talking. I'm honestly here just for the pizza. But instead, it's going to be Jakub who is talking. And if I were to briefly present Jakub, I kind of imagine him a bit like a Pokemon addict. You know, he has to catch them all. But instead of collecting Pokemon cards, he is taking Kubernetes certifications. So in fact, he has taken all possible Kubernetes certifications, which is why he not only can wear that fancy jacket there, but he also can call himself a Kubernetes trainer. And today, he will tell us more about what he knows and how we can also get better and take our Kubernetes skills to the next level. So without further ado, Jakub, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christian, for the introduction. And great to see the crowd here and to know that at least one person is here not for the pizza. So tonight I will present the talk titled A Guide to Kubernetes Certification. Is it worth it? Which one to choose and how to nail it? So as you can see, this will consist of 3 parts when I will go through various Kubernetes certifications, 5 of them, and try to guide you how to choose the one that will be the most suitable based on your career goals or where you are on that path. And finally, I will share quite a few of hints on how to prepare for those certifications, exams, and what to expect during the actual exam. So a few words about myself. I'm Jakub Krzywda, originally from Poland, but live here in Sweden already for quite a while. I came to Umeå in the north to do my doctoral studies over there. And after graduating, I moved to Elastisys. And currently, I'm Cloud Native Training Manager at Elastisys, responsible for our training activities, so delivering and designing various Cloud Native courses. And I'm also the Linux Foundation authorized instructor, which means that I can deliver the official Kubernetes training in person. And as Christian mentioned, I hold all those 5 certifications in Kubernetes, which also gives me this fancy title of Kubestronaut and the most valuable jacket in the world. So let's start first with the question, is it worth it? And actually, when I was advertising this talk on LinkedIn, someone asked me like, oh, so is it worth it? And I honestly said, it depends. That's the kind of the most common answer to most of the questions, and the same is here. So I will try to present here both the benefits of taking the certification, both for yourself as an engineer or also towards the organization within you work, because that is also some benefits for them. And of course, I will also talk a little bit about the costs in various perspectives related to obtaining those certification. But before we go into the individual certifications, let's try to kind of assess which factors should be taken into account when you think about certification in general, not only about the Kubernetes, but any certification. So first of all, is there actually demand for the skills that this certification will prove that you have? Another thing will be the credibility of the issuer. Like, is that organization that certifies that you have that skills credible? Is it well known? Do people trust it? Right? They are the things to consider. And finally, I will also argue that the exam itself should be difficult enough so that actually shows something, right? It shouldn't be like anyone from the street can just take the exam and pass it, and because, yeah, it doesn't prove so much, right? So I would consider these three things here and try to draw a Venn diagram out of that. And I would say those circles, they are somehow dependent on where you are. So, but in general, we'll be kind of looking at the intersection of those three aspects and then try to kind of place them. And yeah, depending on which is kind of your seniority level and what you want to show, then that difficulty will kind of move up and down. For the certificates that we talk about here today, Kubernetes and cloud native, in general, I think we will all agree that demand is there. It's quite popular technologies that many employers are looking for in the candidates when they try to recruit. All of those certificates that we talk about, they are issued by the Linux Foundation, which is kind of a home of biggest open source projects, such as Linux itself, Kubernetes, and so on. So it doesn't really feel that there is any other organization as kind of trustworthy from that perspective. So I think those two are kind of set. And then what you need to kind of adjust, and maybe also to some extent kind of what specialization you have, then maybe there are different skills. But those two kind of, they will depend on you. And we have these two entry exams, which kind of are, it may be the case that for some of you, depending on where you are, they will kind of be outside of the difficulty level. So for me, I didn't have like an ordinary path where I would take those at the beginning, but then I rather took them later on in my career. And honestly, I didn't really study for them, right? I knew that I have two takes, and I was like, okay, let's try the first time. If I pass, then it's good. If it's not, then I'll have another chance. But yeah, both of them I passed with the first attempt, but it was after 5 or more years of working with those technologies and actually teaching some of them. So I'm maybe a little bit biased here. But then we have 3 more certificates which are more on advanced level. The one that are the most well known, so the certified Kubernetes application developer and administrator. And then the kind of the most difficult one, the security specialist, so it kind of comes to the more and more difficult ones. Of course, yeah, if you are not so much into security, or depending if you are developer or administrator, that may be different for you here. So regarding the benefits, first of all, from the personal, let's say, perspective, from your individual perspective, one thing I really find important here is the motivation. So it's sometimes hard to find time to study, sometimes hard to kind of find out which topics shall I focus on, to give yourself somehow a deadline until when I should reach some level. So knowing and deciding, okay, I will go for this certificate, kind of gives you that target that then you can work towards. Another part is the skills and confidence. So of course, you are learning new things, you are getting the knowledge, the practical skills, and actually with the certificate, then you have a proof that is recognized by others that you have the skills. And yeah, that also gives you kind of a boost of your self-confidence that, yeah, I actually studied, I achieved that goal, and it's done. And of course, from kind of building your CV part, that's also great that you have that certification that you can kind of put on your resume. But as I said earlier, there are also benefits for your potential employer, or if you get some contract for the consultancy and so on, that actually shows that you have that skills and you follow the best practices. And thanks to that, the employer can reduce the risk that you will screw up something, misconfigure, and so on. That gives some kind of guarantee maybe, or at least shows that, yeah, you will be productive and so on. It's a little bit, I would kind of compare it with a driving license. It doesn't mean that you are the best driver in the world, but you kind of have a proof, I know how to drive a car, right? For those organizations that go through various audits, it's also good that they can show that their staff is qualified. So then they have a list of their employees that have the CKAD or CKA. So that's also beneficial from that perspective. And something that maybe is not applicable in all cases, but if your organization wants to be a Kubernetes certified service provider, there are certain requirements with, regarding the number of CKA holders. So that's also some kind of argument for that. And so if you want to kind of convince your employer that they should maybe help you with paying for the certification or giving you time to do that, these are some of the arguments that you could use. Of course, apart from just the benefits, there are some certain costs, and that can be both financial, so you need to pay for sitting in those exams. The prices are is 445. There was, I think, 10% increase recently, and these are just the costs for the exam itself. It doesn't include any additional learning materials or nothing like this. But the good news is that there are discounts and bundles available almost all the time. If you check on the Linux Foundation website. And we also will have a special discount today. There will be a quiz that the winner of the quiz will get 50% off. So it's quite some money that you can save with that. So pay attention, and then there'll be a quiz. Time-wise, of course, depends what you know already, but some kind of rough estimates of how much time you need to study, assuming that you will just do, maybe a few hours per week. It may take quite some weeks to be really prepared for those exams, especially the CKS, since it's not only Kubernetes, but also other security-related CNCF projects. It requires quite some significant kind of learner you are. There is also a stress factor related to certification. So all of those exams, they are proctored. They're online, but there is someone sitting somewhere and watching the feed from your camera and listening to what is happening on the through the microphone and so on. So that kind of adds a little bit of nerves there. And they are also time limited. So you need to be able to work kind of under that time pressure and solve the tasks. That was kind of about the part, is it worth it? Of course, everyone has to answer that kind of individually. But if the answer for you will be yes, then it's important to consider which one to choose. So starting with the cloud Kubernetes and Cloud Native Associate, that's kind of very beginning level, I would say. Or if you are an engineer starting with the using of Kubernetes and Cloud Native technologies, or if you are maybe in a non-technical role that is interested in kind of knowing the landscape and being able to kind of navigate through those projects, that could be a good candidate. So it focuses on Kubernetes and other CNCF, mainstream CNCF projects, and there are no prerequisites to this, and it's relatively easy, I would say. Then another one, also entry level, is the Kubernetes and Cloud Native Security, which focuses on the security tools within the Cloud Native landscape. And again, it is kind of, if you are a beginner in that kind of subsection, let's say, with the security focus, or again, non-technical role focusing on the security, that may be a good candidate for you. Again, no prerequisites there for taking this course, and it's also somehow between beginner and intermediate. It requires a little bit more understanding of the security aspects. And then we move on to the more advanced certificates, which is the CKAD, Certified Kubernetes Application Developer, which I believe it would be a good fit for kind of the biggest, to the most of the at least the engineers or people working with application development within that area. So it's really about how to design, build, and deploy applications on Kubernetes. So knowing kind of not how to operate the cluster itself, but how to use an existing cluster and utilize the API of Kubernetes. Again, no prerequisites, and it's more kind of an intermediate level of difficulty here. Then the next one, which I think this one is the most popular. So I think with regards to the total numbers of how many people took it until today worldwide, the Certified Kubernetes Administrator, CKA. And this is way more focused on, of course, on the operation of the cluster itself. So how to install it, upgrade, do some kind of maintenance and so on. That will be more applicable for the cluster admins, DevOps engineers, platform engineers, and so on. There are no formal prerequisites for this one, but it's a kind of advanced level course. So there are also some kind of, you need to understand better what is happening under the hood and how to make a backup of the kind of the database that is within Kubernetes, the etcd, and how to restore from that backup, how to do the upgrade of the certain components, and so on. So not something that will be applicable for every application developer, let's say. And finally, the CKS, so Certified Kubernetes Security Specialist. That is really on the practical aspects of applying best practices regarding the both Kubernetes hardening the cluster itself, as well as other areas of development of the application and deploying it, and looking for vulnerabilities and so on. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not only Kubernetes itself, which already is quite substantial topic, but also other tools within the cloud-native landscape related to security that you actually need to be able to use efficiently and in a timely manner during the exam to pass it. And it's very advanced, and I would say that for most of the people who are not already working within that area, it requires significant preparation in order to pass it. So if we look at this all 5 certificates, we can kind of draw a path which has some, let's say, soft or optional prerequisites and some hard prerequisites. So kind of a natural way, if you start from kind of not knowing anything, would be to start with the Kubernetes and Cloud Native Associate, and then after that, potentially extend that with the security. But yeah, as I mentioned, these are not mandatory prerequisites here. Then we have the one way kind of would be to go for the administrator role and then go for the CKA exam. An alternative would be, if you are more into application development, to go for the CKAD. Of course, it's possible to kind of extend and switch the roles. So maybe after taking a CKAD, maybe you want to extend it with the CKA in order to better understand kind of how to fix some issues related to the cluster itself. The only kind of hard prerequisites, the mandatory one, is in order to be allowed to take the CKS, the Certified Kubernetes Security Specialist, you have to have the CKA. I think they relaxed it slightly, so currently you don't, that one doesn't have to be valid, which is for 2 years, but at some point in the history, you had to pass it in order to be allowed to do the CKS. And it's especially nice if you want to then do it again after it loses the validity. You don't have to redo the CKA. You can just keep redoing the CKS every 2 years. Okay, and that brings us to the third part, so how to nail it, how we can prepare for the exam and pass it with a good grade. So we're talking about the prerequisites. The basic ones, they don't have any. These are the multi-choice exam. I think 4 answers to each question. You just choose the one that you think is right. I actually found it a little bit hard because some of them are, like just this kind of tiny differences between the answers, and then you are like, you can eliminate 2 of them, of course, wrong, but then do they really mean this or maybe that? And it's a little bit of memorizing the documentation pages of the Kubernetes or the projects. Like, yeah, it should be fine, but some of them, they are like, oh, I'm not sure exactly. But for the CKAD, CKA, and CKS, these are like hands-on practical exams that you have an environment that you work with, and then you need to be comfortable with using the Linux command tools and the text editors such as Vim, Nano, or Emacs. I don't want to start a war here, but yeah, because that will be the environment in which you would work, and you need to be able to fix the tasks this way without any fancy editors. The theory part, I would say for the entry ones, for the entry certifications, is mostly studying the documentation pages of Kubernetes or other related projects, CNCF projects. There are some self-paced online training that you can watch someone talking about that, but yeah, you can also just read the documentation pages. For the CKAD, CKA, CKS, there is a lot more. So there are books in that topics. There are self-paced online training, and there are also instructor-led training that are in person or online. But it's kind of slightly different because here for the entry ones, it's kind of more like memorize things. For the other ones, it's more like a fundament for you to understand what you need to do, right? So it's not so important that you remember the definitions, but way more important that you know how to implement certain tasks. Book-wise, I just mentioned a few. I didn't really read them, but there are quite a few from like well-known publishers that you can read that. The challenge, of course, with this approach is that they, to some extent, outdate quite quickly because new versions, new releases of Kubernetes happen 3 times a year now. The certain things, they are the same, but there are new new things coming all the time. So, for those who like to read the books, that could be a thing. Otherwise, you can choose other options. So there are also the self-paced online training, and there are several of them coming directly from the Linux Foundation, depending on which exam you want to go for. Usually you can find corresponding course that you can do, and then nowadays they introduce, I don't remember the name now, but kind of a pack Thrive something. You can pay a subscription and then you have access to all the courses from them. So then you pay that and then you pay for the exam as well. Or there are also independent providers. So the Linux Foundation is quite clear regarding that they kind of separate between the certification and the teaching part, and they kind of have a firewall between that. So it's not like they teach specifically for their tests or they test specifically for their exams, but kind of an API between those is the curriculum that defines which topics and which skills you need to have, and based on that, independent providers can develop their courses, and based on that, the exams are built. There are also the instructor-led training. So in the other ones, yeah, usually you would just kind of be presented with the material and then you study, and maybe there's not so much feedback. Of course, if you appreciate having someone answering your questions, that may be a good opportunity. Also, quite often this will be, you know, just 3 or 4 days, very intense. You just focus on that. You don't do anything else. Of course, it requires more time at that specific moment, but that can also facilitate a quicker knowledge and skills acquiry, and then preparing you for the exam earlier. And yeah, those from Linux Foundation, they of course they follow this official curriculum and so on. They have also quite high standards for allowing someone to become instructor for them, and yeah, so these are these 3 in-person training, each for the advanced courses, the CKA, CKAD, and CKS. And yeah, I did all of them with the Linux Foundation to prepare for the certificates, and I also now I'm authorized to teach those. So after we know the theory, then we need to kind of practice before the exam. For the entry ones, there are some kind of online quizzes that you can do and read more documentation and so on. But for the CKAD, CKA, and CKS, it's very important that you actually do a lot of hands-on. You get the hands-on experience, so you need to really practice to do these tasks in a timely manner, because you will have a limited time. And then there is a very good page. You have the Killer Coda interactive environments and Killer Share for actually practicing. They have like the exam simulators that are included if you buy a exam from the Linux Foundation, that you have access to that, and then you can practice, and that's really important. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean here. You really, for those 3 advanced certifications, you need to practice solving the scenarios and kind of get these good habits of like making sure that you are working with the correct context of the Kubernetes, that like you save the files that you will be editing before you actually apply changes and so on, and that you really gain this hands-on experience before you try to do the exam. Yeah, it's very important to study the documentation page, the official documentation page, and become familiar with it and comfortable with using it, because that's the only resource that you are allowed to use during the exam. So you need to be able to find some code snippets quickly there and know, like, okay, I need to combine this and that, create maybe this volume here and that persistent volume there, and so on, and that's how I will solve that specific tasks later on. With regards to the scheduling of the exam, I think it's also quite important to think about it in advance. So you will need, because of the requirements of how you take the exam, and that applies to all of them, that should be a private space, so you need to think like where I will be able to just sit by myself in a room without other people distracting and being there. So I would say around maybe 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before, it's good to kind of look, especially if you want to find a nice time, not in the middle of a night or anything like this. That's good to find that and yeah, schedule in advance. And that also gives you that deadline. I need to be ready by then. You can change it up to, I think, 24 hours if something happens, but otherwise you kind of have that timeline. And when we were saying about the the exam simulators. You get the 2 runs with them, each of them for 36 hours. You have the environment available, and you can do as many kind of tries as possible, regrade them, and learn from your mistake and so on. But you also, I would say that to use one of that opportunity, one of that session with the simulator to actually practice solving it within the time frame. So you have 2 hours normally for the exam, and then maybe 15 to 20 tasks. So to kind of practice this, just focusing on doing the exam, and have just this glass of water that you are allowed during the exam, and just sit there and feel kind of, find out how it feels and what to expect during the actual exam. The great thing about these simulators is that after the first 2 hours elapse, then the environment will stay there until 36 hours. And then you can kind of check the solutions. You can check the grading of your current solutions. So you can see, oh, I did a mistake here, and they will give you a partial grading for each of the kind of subtask. And based on that, you can see, okay, I still made a mistake here, so I can try to fix it and then regrade and see, okay, it's fixed and so on. So I would say try to sit there and do it as long as you have everything right, and ideally maybe take some notes. Okay, I made a mistake here, there, so something to remember to pay more attention, or maybe study that certain area from the documentation. That will be something that will increase your chances of passing later on. Yeah, I would say, we have these 2 runs with the exam simulator. So the first one to do a bit more in advance, so you have the time to improve later on, and maybe use the second one as kind of a warm-up before the exam, maybe a day or 2 before the exam, so you make sure that you remember the most important commands, maybe some aliases or something that you want to configure in your environment. That's a good opportunity to kind of have this muscle memory for those kubectl commands that will be useful during the exam. And also that you remember things where they are in the documentation, so then you can quickly find that code snippet that you can then copy-paste into your solution. So here I just give you 2 sample kind of preparation plans for the CKAD exam. And there are 2 options here, 2 alternatives. The one on the left assumes that you would take a course, like a Kubernetes app developer training, that will kind of intensive 3 days over the week 1, that you will learn all the theory. And then the next 2 weeks, you can do the more self-studying, including these interactive scenarios, do the exam simulation, find out which areas you still need to improve, and then finally in the last week, do the simulation again, and then do the exam. So that will be more kind of intense plan. And alternatively, you can extend this first part maybe over 5 weeks, depends how much time you can spend, and study the theory, maybe read the book, maybe get the self-paced online course and so on, and extend that period, and then kind of repeat the same thing, but with over a longer time here, depending kind of how you feel about your knowledge of Kubernetes. Kind of when you start, you can think about maybe moving the first exam simulator earlier on, so you actually know what exact skills are necessary and how to tailor your kind of learning towards that. And finally, kind of what to expect during the exam. So there are very strict regulations, and that kind of fits into this credibility of the issuer. So it's not only the org didn't get any external help during that. So on one hand, it may be annoying things that, and then stressful, but on the other hand, that is also kind of the way to guarantee that then this certification is recognized later on. It's, yeah, again, like during the driving exam, right? It would be nicer just to do it with your parent and they say, yeah, yeah, you are ready, go. But I'm not sure if I would like to be on the street if everyone will get their driving exams this way. So examination room itself, it should be quite tidy and so on. I remember once I was on the travel and I wanted to do one of these exams in the hotel, and then I had my suitcase somewhere next to the desk, and then when I was showing the room, I was like, no, that's too close, move your suitcase more far away. So they really wanted to be clear around the desk and so on. They are fine with kind of paintings on the wall, but not like with the posters or this kind of stuff that they have text, because maybe, you know, you have some secret kubectl commands on the wall there or something like that. Yeah, it should be, as I said, private space, so it cannot be open space, it cannot be coffee place or anything like this when you do the exam. The computer setup, pure browser later on, but yeah, the minimum resolution of the monitor, the internet access, of course, they recommend that to be on the wire and not Wi-Fi. You need to have built-in microphone and web camera, and that webcam, yeah, you need to be able to show the room under the desk and this kind of stuff. So with regards to monitor, is only one monitor that is allowed. So that's something to take into account, that you have to have that monitor and the webcam. So if the webcam is on your lid of your laptop, that will not work, right? Then you need to just do it on that laptop. If you want to use the external monitor, you will most probably need an external camera for the exam. Yeah. I think we will take the questions later on, okay? The documents, that's also necessary to have the valid government-issued document. It can be a passport, it can be a governmental ID. And it's important to double-check when you register that you provide the names as they are in the document. And another annoying thing is with some documents and the material and the glare, because then you need to show it into the webcam, and then depending on the lighting, it can be a reflection, and they will, oh, I cannot read your last name or something. Yeah. But the good trick there is that it's allowed also with, at least with the Mac and iPhone. I don't know how it works with other hardware, but you can use an external camera on your mobile phone. So that's easier to just put it on the table, your document, and then try to get the focus with the camera in your phone. Yeah, the exam environment in itself on the computer, that is a secure browser that you will only get access to downloads within 30 minutes before your scheduled exam. And that's like an individual binary just for you that you will get. And that will be the only application that is allowed to run on the computer during the exam. So you'll have to turn off everything else. And within that, you will have the kind of the environment for doing the tasks, as well as the browser within that. So you cannot have your own browser, your bookmarks, anything like that. That's not allowed. And from my experience, I would say that expect some lags in the exam, which is especially annoying with the browsing through the documentation. And when there are long pages, you know, you start scrolling, nothing is happening, so you scroll more, and then suddenly like the whole page goes to the bottom, and it's like, oh. Then that's why also I always say during the training to practice using kubectl explain. That's a very good command that can allow you to do things, get the documentation within your terminal and not having to go through the browser. the probably last thing, the time management. Yeah, almost done. There's a lot of tasks and quite limited time, especially with the longer, the advanced certifications. So it's not a good time to learn new things during that time. So if you find out, I don't know how to do this task, just flag it, you can do it, keep it for later, move on, don't get stuck on one thing forever, because then, yeah, you will lose too much time. And then you can always revisit the questions towards the end of the exam. If you find out, okay, I did all the things that I know, now I can check the others. Perfect time management. Okay, so let's move to the Q&A part. And did we want to check first? Sorry, I remember about the question there, but did we wanted to check if there was anything? No. Okay, perfect.
Okay, anyone who wants to ask Jakub a question? We had a question there about the operating system. Shall we take that now first?
Could you expand a bit about the